All right, Max Major, you are live on the Happy Hustle podcast, my brother. I am so excited to connect.
Hey, how's it going?
Dude, this is going to be an amazing interview. You are seriously one of the most remarkable humans I know. Just a world-renowned mentalist, a hypnotist, a mind reader. I wanted to get into how to hack the human mind and influence others and
Yeah.
human behavior. And I know you've done some huge performances all over the world. You just had a huge opportunity with America's Got Talent, which I want to get into. And you're going to be hopefully, on that show very soon. I don't want to leak any good details, but talk to us a little bit about your inspiration as a mentalist, as a hypnotist, as a mind reader, and what got you into this world.
Sure. Yeah. So if people don't know, a mentalist is like a magician of the mind. It's about reading people. It's about influencing choices. And really, it's a combination of the showmanship of a magician mixed with science, psychology, hypnosis, body language, influence. That's really what a mentalist is. And so it creates the illusion of a sixth sense, but it's really about being extra observant, perceptive, picking up on cues that people are giving you. And I've spent the last, over 20 years of my life kind of perfecting and honing my talents. And it's no one discipline you really study to be a mentalist. It's a bunch of different disciplines that combine to create this sort of sixth sense. And so I read a lot about body language and influence. I learned hypnosis when I was 18 years old. But it all started because I was always just fascinated with the mind. When I was around 16 or 17, my dad, he went to see a hypnotherapist because he wanted to quit smoking. And, prior to that, he had tried everything. My dad was never good at quitting anything. But one day he went to a hypnotherapist and didn't tell us. He just went and he came home and he never smoked again. And for him, it was like magic. And at the time, I was mostly doing card tricks, magic, sort of traditional magic. And I was fascinated by this. It was like, wait, okay, so you went and you talked to this guy and he whammied you. And now you don't want to smoke anymore. And for my dad, it was literally that simple. And so I started researching hypnosis immediately. And I found out that this was sort of something I had a natural talent for. And hypnosis is really about using your words to influence and shape someone's behavior, their mindset, their reality, because our words and our thoughts, they really create our reality. Everything that we hear and we take in, whether it's the media, things that friends say, things that we tell ourselves, all of these form our personal reality. Mm-hmm. And so the same way that you can shift a thought in your own head and change a belief and change the course of your life, a hypnotist can help you sort of fast track that process. So I learned hypnosis. That got me interested in the mind. Started studying these other topics I mentioned and, started performing, for neighbors wherever I could. And then over time, it grew to performing on some of the biggest stages in the world. And, now here I am 20 years later, still continuing every day to refine, and now quarantine being the ultimate test of my abilities. I've been trying to figure out how can I read people through a screen. I used to think that I had to be there in person. And so kind of challenging some of my skills in that way. It's been a very unique time period for me.
Yeah. I mean, I love that story about your dad. I really think that's so powerful. And personally, I've seen your power at the Ultimate Biohacking Experience, and you put to sleep through hypnosis the whole room, basically. And it was once in a lifetime.
That was an incredible experience. This is one of my souvenirs from that time together. Yeah. My headband from a blindfolded dance and meditation we did kind of really spoke to me. But I had the opportunity, I was invited to present and perform at that event to kind of demonstrate the limits of the human mind. And what's interesting about hypnosis is all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. I think there's this misconception, like when you see me put your friends to sleep and the other attendees at the Biohacking Week, there's this misconception that I'm doing something or I'm exerting some power over people. But the truth is, all hypnosis is self-hypnosis, right? And so really, I'm just your guide. So a lot of people think it's about being weak-minded or about being gullible, but it's actually the opposite that's true. It's actually about being able to show intense focus and concentration. And all the hypnotist does is they sort of guide you the same way that someone might do in a guided meditation. So yeah, like you saw at the event, we had an incredible group of very strong kind of alpha male men
Yeah.
were pushing the limits of their businesses, of their minds, of their physicality. You know, we're doing cryotherapy and cold plunging and all these, you know, wild sort of extreme workouts together. And so these were clearly a group of strong, not weak-minded men. You'd have to agree. And on
Yes,
the
for
last
sure.
night of the conference, I put on a performance, and really almost everyone ended up going under. There's a really cool video of it. You can see on my Instagram from that week together. But yeah, I think hypnosis kind of sheds light on something that we know is true innately, but sometimes we have to experience to really understand. And so a lot of times when someone experiences hypnosis, they come out the other side of it realizing how incredibly powerful their mind is. Like, so wait a minute, if in that moment Max could plant this little seed that I was powerless, you know, someone couldn't lift their arm or their feet or something, then the inverse must also be true, that I am powerful and I am capable and I am willing. And so our thoughts really do create our reality. And I think hypnosis kind of illustrates that in the most dramatic way, that the thoughts that we have, whether they are our own or the thoughts that someone else wants us to have, whether it's the media or the negativity you've been surrounded by your whole life, it really shapes your reality, you know, because you can go through the day focusing on the 10 or 12 things that went wrong in your day and feel like you're just the most unlucky person on earth, or you can go through your day focusing on the 10 or 12 things that went amazing. And so perception really does ultimately create our reality. And I think that's one of the really cool things that seeing a hypnotist can illustrate, whether you participate yourself, which is the most powerful way to experience it, or you just see others do it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, truthfully, our thoughts shape our reality. You said
Absolutely.
it so elegantly. What I want to do for the listeners and the viewers is really put together a practice that they can implement to shift their self-limiting stories and their beliefs that maybe are not serving them any longer. Is there anything that you utilize to optimize your thoughts and create a better reality for yourself? Is there a practice that you could recommend to others out there watching?
So I utilize a lot of the same practices we all do. I'm still on my own journey. No guru by any means. I've had struggles with my health. I have some beliefs that I continue to challenge about what I'm capable of as a result of sort of the story I told myself over the years of being sick. And a lot of the tools that I've found to be incredibly helpful are things that aren't really complicated. It's like journaling. I practiced something called artist pages or morning pages.
Morning pages.
Which is just a brain dump, just stream of consciousness. There's no objective. You're not writing about anything. You're literally writing every word that goes through your head for 3 pages. I've had some success with that. And you know, not going back and reading them, but allowing the process itself of writing to be the work. And then what I found is if I visit those pages much later, so not in real time, but 6 months later, I'll actually see myself work through something. It's like it's almost like a way of having a conversation with yourself. And that's not the intent or the goal, but I can see it when I look back that I didn't have the answers. But then gradually these things that I was complaining about or stressing about or focusing on, they either just went away over time or I resolved them through my writing, even though that wasn't the goal or the intent. So that's something that's been incredibly helpful. Lately, I've been diving deep into Joe Dispenza's work. And Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditations are unlike anything I've ever experienced. If you're the type of person who has meditated and not had luck with it in the past, I think his format might really work for you. One, he uses music in the background, which for some reason for me allows me to really just tune everything else out. But also his meditations, they're like 45 minutes or an hour and a half. Don't let that intimidate you because they feel like they're 5 minutes long. It's the strangest thing. The first one that I did was 45 minutes and I was like dreading it. Like, holy shit, I can't even sit still for a normal 20-minute headspace. And it went by and it was over. And I was like, what was that, 5 minutes? It's like 45 minutes. So, and then I also just constantly try to be, you know, just as a general practice, be aware of my thoughts and the things that I'm telling myself and catch myself when I say things that sound very limiting. So
those are great takeaways. I mean, journaling, first and foremost, that's how I start every morning. And I really identify, what am I grateful for? What really is something that maybe I've taken for granted, but now I want to take a moment and appreciate it, much deeper.
Yeah.
Then I really spent some time with, I love the morning pages, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron.
Amazing book. If you're creative in any capacity, The Artist's Way, because really our work as artists and as creatives, a lot of the blocks that we face are the same blocks that we face in other areas of our lives. And so, our past, our histories, our trauma, our conditioning, all of those things shape our work. And a lot of artists are scared to let go of that stuff because they feel like, well, that's my fuel. If I'm not troubled anymore, I can't be a stand-up comic. That's my material. But in reality, getting a handle on that and actually allows you to become more aware of who you are. And so it's a very incredibly deep and personal book that allows you to unlock new levels of creativity in your work, no matter what you do. It's incredible.
Very powerful. I also think having a positive affirmation that you tell yourself every day. I have a list of the things I tell myself, and I get on my rebounder every morning and I jump and I give myself positive affirmations and I step into my power, and I have an alter ego that I go to in order to tell myself.
Does he have a name?
He does.
What's his name?
Zor. So, I have multiple different alter egos for different environments. In the bedroom, it's a different alter ego, but, in the business boardroom, different. But I definitely think the power of the mind is so beautiful. And I'd love to continue to unpack this with you, because I know you are such a master of the mind. Whether you want to toot your own horn, I'm going to toot it for you, because I see how you can break through these barriers with those strong men who are type A, alpha entrepreneurs, and bring them to ultimately your control. And I'd like to talk about how you do that and how others can do something similar with the power of influence.
So I think the core of what you're really talking about is rapport. Yes. And many of the tools I use as a mentalist to read people, they can be used to make you better in communication, whether it's in business or you want to be more influential, or as a leader or as a speaker or as a lover, you want to communicate with your partner. All of these things are tools that really have applications for real life. And so to walk into a room with a bunch of alpha males and to submit them to your will, or to have them have an altered state, which ultimately requires a lot of trust in you, requires building rapport. And this is a topic that I give keynotes on all over the world. I teach business executives how to take the tools of the mentalist from the stage to the boardroom. And one of the core principles of what I do is really, it's about rapport, which is that feeling of connectedness, whether it's with a stranger or someone you've known for a long time. It's about body language. That's the other sort of core tenet, because body language is really about listening, right? And so if I could teach you to be a better listener by using body language, Carrie, do you think that would make you better in business?
Yes, 100%.
If I could teach you to be a better listener, would that make you a better partner to your significant other?
I'm sure Stephanie would agree. Yes.
Yeah. So in every way, really, I'd like you to think about body language not as this like nefarious spy technique where you're like decoding what's really going on inside someone's head. It's really about another form of listening, and it's about taking in more information. And the last piece of it is sort of some tools of influence and tactics of influence once you have that rapport built. And so the easiest way to build rapport, especially with a stranger, because you sort of naturally already have rapport with people that you know. It's sort of a default setting you fall into when you talk to an old friend like you and I right now. But it's also something that happens accidentally. So sometimes you'll go to the register at the grocery store, and like you look up from your wallet and you look at the person on the other side of the counter, and you have this moment where like for a second you're like, do I know you? Like, why? Like it's their energy or something they're giving off where you feel like this instant connection. And it happens accidentally, but you also can take the lessons from those accidental encounters and the rapport of old friends, and you can create it on purpose. And so a lot of times what's happening when you have that accidental rapport with someone is you're seeing things in them that remind you of yourself. And so in many ways, it's like looking into a mirror. And so that person, they may have a similar background to you. They may have a similar cadence or accent in their voice. They may be like someone that you grew up with, right? So all those things, it's like a mirror coming back. You're like yourself reflecting back at you. And that's why it feels familiar. You're like, oh, wow, I really feel like I know this person. But it's because they probably have similar behaviors, personalities, looks, to yourself in some way. And so if you want to create instant rapport with a perfect stranger, what you do is that you walk into a meeting, whatever it is in the first like 60 to 90 seconds of meeting them, you're going to mirror your body language and your behavior and your voice to them. And what that's going to do is you're going to sort of meet them on their level, and it's going to make them very comfortable. So if you're a person like me who's sort of full of energy, talks fast and talks loud, and someone else who you're meeting with is a little smaller, quieter, if you come at them, boom, with big energy right out of the gates, they're going, whoa, like this guy, coffee, and this guy's like fired out of a cannon. So all we're going to do is we're going to mirror their body language, literally whatever pose they're in, for the first 60 to 90 seconds of the meeting. So for instance, if your arms were crossed right now, go ahead. And I walked into the meeting, I'm just going to do what Carrie's doing as I'm talking to him. If he's leaning to one side, I might also lean to that side. If we were seated and you could see his full body and his legs were crossed, I would sit with my legs crossed. I would do my best to mirror everything about his posture. Now, this might feel very obvious, but it's invisible in the first 2 minutes of meeting someone. And then what we're going to do is every time they adjust their posture within that 60 to 90 second window, we're going to move with them. So if they uncross their arms, so back to this position, and you and I are talking, back to this position, Carrie. Yeah. Oh. Cross your arms. Okay. And then just naturally uncross your arms. We continue talking. And I would just do the same thing. Maybe he puts his hands in his lap. I would do the same thing. And what that's going to do is that's going to make them very comfortable. But I'm also not just going to match their body language. I'm going to match their voice in volume, rate, and tone. So if there's someone who talks a little quieter when they speak, I'm going to bring it down a little bit. Okay. If they speak a little more slower and measured, I'm going to speak more slowly and measured and thoughtful, right? And you can really use this on the phone, especially now. Yeah, for sales. Everyone doing Zoom meetings and phone calls in the absence of real meetings. This actually becomes more important than ever. So when you call someone and they pick up the phone, we're going to meet them at their energy level. We're going to meet them at their volume. So if the person that answers the phone is a little softer spoken, we're going to be a little softer spoken. Hey, how's it going? How's your day so far? We're not going to, hey, how's it going? What's up? We're not going to come at them like we're fired out of the cannon. Yeah. So we're only going to do this. We're not going to do this for the whole meeting. We're only going to do this for the first 60 to 90 seconds. Again, we'll go back to the in-person meeting. Okay, so let's assume both our arms are crossed again. Carrie, we're back in this position. Okay. And then cross your arms. Yeah. And then at some point in the conversation after that first 60 or 90 seconds, I'm going to adjust my posture to something that is a little bit more open, a little less guarded, and hopefully they're going to mirror me at that point because of the rapport we built. So we've been doing this for 90 seconds, and now I'm going to maybe relax my arms. I'm going to lean in a little bit. And there we go. I didn't tell them to do this. Obviously, you know the example. But when that happens, okay, when we built that rapport and suddenly we sit back in our chair, we uncross our arms, and they sit back in their chair and they uncross their arms, don't freak out, okay? Don't laugh. Play with it a little bit. Start to experiment. Right? So now you've got them. You have this sort of marionette kind of puppet master thing going on, and try to control their behavior. Have a little fun with it. And maybe you reach for your coffee and you take a sip of your coffee. Yeah. And you'll find that like magic, they take a sip of their coffee. And you'll see this rapport naturally. If you go out to a coffee shop or a restaurant and you look at maybe like an old couple who are eating, they'll like cut their food at the same time. It's not anything they've choreographed. They're not doing it on purpose. They take a sip of their wine at the same time. And typically one person leads the other person by like a fraction of a second, right? And so that's something human beings naturally have done through evolution for survival. It creates a deeper connection, right? When you do these behaviors, the same way that your dog realizes, okay, if I do this, I get X, Y, and Z. We've learned as human beings by mirroring someone, it creates a deeper connection, which ultimately leads to our survival. So these things are kind of hardwired into us. Then for the remainder of the conversation, after we've kind of played with that puppet master thing, we can just go into our own regular cadence, but really it's about just building that rapport and that comfort and then shifting them into a more comfortable posture through the duration of the conversation. And so make this a practice. Every time you get on a Zoom call or you get on a phone call, or as the world starts to open back up again, you go to an in-person meeting, start the first 60 to 90 seconds of that meeting by, when you sit down, get into the exact posture of the other person. Every time they move for that first 2 minutes, you're going to move with them. If they take a sip of their drink, you're going to take a sip of your drink. Until you've done that long enough, you feel like there's a connection there, and then you're going to start to play with that connection. You're going to shift your posture to something that's more open, more conducive to an open conversation. You're going to see if they move with you. If they don't, then you just haven't built enough rapport yet. You need to go back to mirroring them for another 90 seconds to 2 minutes, and then keep testing that connection. So that's something that can make a conversation with a perfect stranger suddenly feel like you're talking to an old friend. So if you're seated on a plane next to someone, these are just things that put people at ease. And this isn't about being a used car salesman and using the tools of influence to get your way over someone. It's really just about making other people more comfortable and ultimately being a better communicator and ultimately being a better listener. So yeah, hopefully that's a useful tool that everyone can take into their next encounter.
Yeah, I think that's so relevant, especially now, given the crisis, given all of the digital conversations and communication. Yeah. How do you build the rapport? As Max said, that 60 to 90 seconds, spend mirroring them. Really,
usually it's small talk, right? Like, usually that's what people default to, which honestly isn't the best way. It's talking about anything is better than talking about nothing. So there's certainly nothing wrong with talking about the weather. It's a perfectly fine opening to a conversation on an airplane flight. There's no bad conversation, but hopefully it's about progressing to something meaningful at some point. So you know, you can still engage in the catching up back and forth, but to make it a little bit more comfortable, you can use the mirroring tools to sort of build that rapport a lot quicker. Another thing to do, a lot of people try to find common ground with strangers, right? So you'll
like, where are you from? Yeah. And then you're like, oh, I've been there.
Yeah. And then you like bullshit, right? So you're like, oh, you're from Jackson Hole. I love it there. It's amazing. You know, and then you say the wrong state and you end up sounding like an idiot, right?
Yeah.
So instead of trying to find common ground, it's actually much easier and much more effective to just talk about what they're interested in and to ask a lot of questions and dig deep. So it doesn't matter. It's actually even better if you don't share that. So let's say you're talking with someone and they mention you've just sat down that they just got back from a ski trip. And let's say that you're not a skier. You've never been skiing in your life, right? A lot of people would go, oh yeah, I love skiing. You know, I go all the time. You just bullshit, right? But instead, we're just going to dig into that topic. So, oh, awesome. We're going to be honest. I've never been skiing before. Like, why do you love it? Like, where did you go? Is that a great place to go? Was it a good resort? What's the coolest place you've ever been skiing? Like, where should I go if I'm a beginner? Like, start asking a million questions about the thing that they're interested in, and you'll actually form a deeper connection with them than bonding over common interests, because people love talking about themselves. So the more you keep someone talking about a topic that they enjoy or they're passionate in, the more endeared they're going to feel to you. So you can try this out if you go to a networking event or you have some time to chat in a Zoom meeting before it starts, you know, with some of the people that are there. Maybe someone has a charity that's like really special to them. Maybe you look them up on LinkedIn before you go into the meeting and you realize that they have a specific charity that you notice they do a lot of work with. Instead of pretending to also be interested in that same topic, you can just dig. You can just say, hey, you know, I noticed on your LinkedIn that you are curious about XYZ or that charity. You know, what is it about that charity that's so important to you? And you just get them talking about a topic that's important to them. And you know, it's, again, intent is important. Like, you should be genuinely interested.
For sure.
You shouldn't just be filling time and filling conversation. Intent trumps all of this. Like, the ultimate tool of influence is intent. Like, if you're showing up with a genuine curiosity, that's going to take you further than if you're trying to like close a deal or extract maximum value or, you know, get
just
one
being
over.
Authentic.
Having that intent. It's really the best tool of influence. So yeah, talking about something that person enjoys. So you're like at the cocktail party, instead of the small talk, you hear someone mention something that either you don't know something about or you've always been curious about, and you just dig. Like, people love to talk about things they love. And you do this for 20 minutes, and then you like leave that group and walk away from that conversation. And Karen is going to be like, oh my gosh, that Max was so amazing. He's like,
he's
such
a nice guy.
And she's literally learned nothing about you. She's talked about herself, Karen, for 20 minutes. And now
damn it, Karen.
She feels this deep connection with you, and she's only talked about herself because people are interested in people who are interested in them. They love talking about topics that they enjoy. You know, a lot of times people meet me and they want to ask me a million questions about being a mentalist and a magician, and I could talk about it all day. Like, it's never tedious, you know, to talk about what I love. And obviously there's a fine line between a conversation being one-sided, that kind of thing. But that's another great tool you can use to form an instant connection with someone, is instead of looking for common ground, find something you know nothing about and dig deep, start asking questions.
Those are great points. Just to unpack all of that good stuff. Mirroring when you first meet someone, definitely utilizing in questioning what they're interested in and focusing on how you can add value to their lives too, I think is a big one. Like
Sure.
anytime you can really just come from a genuine
I
place
think
and
that's
add
a
value.
philosophy in business that will serve you better
For
than
sure.
anything else. I learned this probably 10 years ago from a book called The Go-Giver by Bob Berg. The Go-Giver, really, I mean, it's like a 40-pager tiny
Yeah.
book. You can read it in an afternoon. And it shaped my approach to business probably right out of college, probably maybe more like 15 years ago.
Well, you
And
have
it
a
was all
business
about,
degree, right?
it was all about giving value and never asking for anything.
Yep.
And it's not about giving value in the hopes that you receive something in return. Because a lot of times people are sort of like scorekeepers. A lot of people like keep tally, like, oh, well, I did this for him, so now he owes me one. It's not about what you'll get in return. It's about giving selflessly, knowing that the universe will give it back to you in some way, but that even if it doesn't, that's okay too. And so I've built my entire career off of giving value first, connecting other people. When I lived in Washington, D.C., I had a networking group, and I would spend all of my time at networking events, even when I attended other people's networking events, never talking about myself, never giving out my card, just learning what other people do and trying to connect them to other people in the room, just being that person that can connect everyone. Maybe they're a photographer and they're just getting started, and I'd say, hey, I know this amazing event planner. And I would just make that connection with no expectation. No, I want a referral fee. You know, if I send friends to Biohacking Week, you know, to you and Anthony, I've never asked for anything in return, even though you guys have generously offered. It's just something that it's an event I believe in. I believe people will get value out of it. I want to help people. I don't do anything because I hope to receive some kind of quid pro quo kind of return in any relationship, whether that's someone I have just met in business or someone I've known for 20 years, because I truly believe everything that you give comes back to you tenfold. But also, if you give without any expectation of receiving anything, that's when the real magic starts to happen.
100%. You're preaching to the choir. I believe the secret to living is giving, like my main man, Tony Robbins says. And that's why, you know, I have the 3 principles of the happy hustle is, you know, passion, purpose, and positive impact. Because yes, you can have passion for something, which is obviously, you know, inward facing. Yes, you can have a purpose, more outward serving, like a cause that you believe in. But then what is it all for? The positive impact, the value that you bring to the world and to others, into their lives. And that's why, I mean, that's why I even wanted to start the Happy Hustle and have people like you on who are inspiring others to give without, you know, trying to get anything in return, just being unapologetically yourself and giving value and just being kind too. So I love that, Max. I want to take it back actually, because I know where you are now. You know, you're this, you know, world-renowned mentalist and hypnotist and mind reader, and you got so much going for you. But I want to take it back to baby Max. I want to take it back to when you were just a kid. What did you first do for money? What was your first hustle?
If it wasn't this, because I did my first paying show when I was 14. So that was like my professional career started then. If you get paid for something, if it's what is it? If it's more than 50% of your income, then you're a professional. I had no income at 14, so I was a professional. I got my first show. My neighbor paid me, I think it was like $45, I think, or something like that. For like, I did like a 2-hour thing for her kid's 6th birthday. So that was like my first hustle, and I performed at kids' birthday parties. And I didn't do anything silly or goofy like a lot of kids' birthday. I just met them at their level. I didn't talk down to them. And I did amazing things. I didn't do childish things. I just did amazing things for kids. And that's really where I learned to be a performer and entertainer. And I think a lot of artists look down on either non-paying work or low-paying work and saying that that is a demonstration of their value. And I never had that philosophy. I had an amazing mentor growing up. His name was Denny Haney. He owned a magic shop called Denny and Lee Magic Studio in Baltimore, Maryland. And he told me, say yes to everything. That was like his advice. I'm so glad I got that advice, because I see so many performers who give the terrible advice, which is you should never work for free, because if you work for free, you're worth nothing. And I think that's oftentimes coming from people who aren't actually professionals. It's people who are casually doing the thing, because anybody that I know that really does the thing has given it away. And I still give it away to this day. And in the beginning, there's reasons to give it away, and those reasons change later in your career. 20 years later, I still do events for free because maybe it's a cause that I believe in, or I think it's something that would be really cool to participate in, or because I just want to give value to that person or their audience or whatever it is. But in the early stages, it's about that flight time, right? It's about like getting as many reps as possible at that craft. And so if someone will give you a stage, and even if that stage is their living room with their kids, and you're a grown ass man, like the answer is yes. It's yes, because there is no way to skip from beginner to expert at anything. No one skips stages. No one goes from beginner to master in any craft. You have to progress. It's always a progression. There's no exception. And the only way to progress is not by practicing in isolation in your house at whatever that thing is. It's doing it in the environment in which you'd be doing it for real. So if you're a performer, even performing in front of kids, for me, I was young, but if I was starting now, I would do the same thing. Every opportunity to perform is a chance to work on your timing and your delivery and being spontaneous and witty and responding to the weird things that happen that you only learn through doing. So I was performing as a kid as often as possible. And most of the people who hired me were like neighbors and friends of family. It was usually birthday parties, but I volunteered, like the local library would reach out to me and they'd say, hey, would you want to do a show for kids to teach about reading? Like, yeah, sure. I just always said yes, whether it was paying or unpaying, because I just wanted as much experience as possible. And by the time that I graduated high school, I had more performances under my belt in those 4 years than a lot of people who had been practicing magic for 5 or 10 years. And so that early experience was really valuable to me. And then there was a lot of other hustles. Like my brother and I used to buy candy really cheap and resell it at school. That was like a classic hustle. We would I was in 4-H as a kid, so we would go to the fair. And there were all these vendors that sold like bulk candy by the pound. So we would buy the warheads. Like the warheads were like
the sour ones.
Maker. Remember the like atomic warheads? They were like the big money maker. And my brother was super into this, and so he would like hedge. He would get this bulk candy really cheap, and then he would sell it for, I don't know, like 4 pieces for $1 or something at school. And the more sour or more hot or whatever was weird, the better, the stranger the candy. And so we always had weird hustles like that growing up. My mom was always trying like one random business or another to kind of like, she always had side hustles. My entire life, my mom had a side hustle, whether it was like buying purses and reselling them or jewelry. Like she always had something she was working on. And that was really formative and inspiring growing up. And I would help her with like inventory. So I always had business tendencies. Because as an artist, you have to also, it's show business. So you also have to learn the business side too. And I think a lot of time people get really hung up on the craft. Like, I'm just going to be so good at making music or writing or podcasting, and that's going to be enough, right? And the truth is, we would love it if it was just a meritocracy and that the cream rise to the top. But it's much more complicated than that, especially in a noisy world. And so I realized very early on that business was an important skill set to have in addition to being an artist. And that's not a skill that comes naturally to most artists. And so I went to University of Maryland. I studied business there because I knew I wanted to be a performer for the rest of my life. But I knew that if I wanted it to be a business and a career, that I better learn marketing and sales and accounting and these things. And so I've always kind of been wired this way because of those early experiences performing and with my mom and with my brother. But I took it seriously. I mean, I had mentors who were businessmen that I looked up, not just performers and magicians. And I studied business because it's an art and a craft, just like studying mentalism and entertainment was. And I think that's really important advice for a photographer, a DJ, a podcaster, a hustler, anyone. Is that yes, you must have a great product. Yes, you must be technically proficient, but that is sort of like, that's the price of entry. But you also must learn about marketing, about video. I mean, grow your skill sets much wider and broader. I think there's an advantage to being a jack of all trades. I think a lot of people look down on someone who has a lack of focus or whose attention is all over the place. Mm-hmm. Especially early on, the more exposure and experience and hobbies and interests you have, the better, because that's going to shape your art ultimately. That's going to inspire your art, but that's also going to help you find your path. If you're trying to find your hustle, like trying a bunch of different things, something eventually is going to speak to you. I was lucky that I knew what my passion was when I was a teenager, but not everyone stumbles on that thing so early in life. And I'm still continuing to explore and have these chance encounters that teach me about something new that becomes a passion of mine, like biohacking. And so, yeah, dipping your feet in as many pools as possible and helping people with projects. And if you don't have your own business, helping people with their business, like learning just the foundational skills, but also having enough collisions that ultimately something will go off in your head, and suddenly you'll find that one thing that you would do for the rest of your life for free. And then, really listening to that. Like, I try to live in such a way where I'm always listening. And if something speaks to me, or if something no longer speaks to me, I try to really listen to that. And I allow that to be my navigation, my compass, not money, not where the opportunity lies, but what's interesting to me. Because ultimately, if it's something I'm not interested in, my passion's not going to flow into it. Quality is going to suffer. So I really try to navigate by what do I enjoy? What conversations do I like having? And maybe I'll just pull that thread and tug it. Maybe it's just a curiosity. Like for me, it was transitioning from performing for corporate events to doing public shows and touring. And I had done just a public show with a friend. I was on his show, and I was like, wow, that was kind of fun. And instead of just ignoring that and going back to my old life, I didn't shift gears immediately, but I started tugging at that string. And I said, well, maybe I'll do my own show. And then well, that was interesting. I did more. I want to do more of that. And then over time, I realized like that's where my excitement and my enthusiasm was around public performances. And gradually over time, I began shifting my business in that direction as well. So I'm constantly sort of listening when I'm doing my craft to see, has my passion changed? If so, why? What can I do to reignite it? Is it worth reigniting? Those are important questions to ask yourself, because the choice you make when you're 14 years old doesn't necessarily mean 20 years later that it's the thing that you're still most fired up about. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And so I've been doing the same thing. Yeah, I've been on the same path, but where I am now, in the direction and the turns and the twists that it's taken, and the form in which I deliver the things that I do, is ultimately something I never could have predicted. So it feels like a singular path, but I had many forks in the road, and I've changed directions so many times. And it's because ultimately I'm navigating by that, by those whispers, those little things that you hear yourself say to yourself, and instead of ignoring it, going, oh, what's that about? Why was that so much fun? And digging it.
I mean, it's so true. You have to follow your curiosity. You have to truly listen to your soul. What is calling you? What right now are you not doing that you would do for free, and that speaks to your entire being? I mean, Max is gonna.
When do you feel really alive?
Exactly.
Like, when do you feel most alive? Because there is no greater indicator what your calling is than that. And when you have those moments where you lose track of time and you feel full of joy and like going, wait a minute, what was that? And then digging deeper on that, it's really important. I heard Oprah once talk about something she called a whisper. She's like, we have whispers in life. We can either choose to listen to them or we can ignore them. But over time, if you continue to ignore them, they start to get louder. And I've had many things like that in my life that I kind of like ignored. AGT was probably one of those whispers. And I always came up with reasons not to do things in my life. And over time, the volume got louder until you either find yourself in a state where you're in the right mindset to say yes to that thing, or you're in the right mindset to say yes to everything life offers, and then those opportunities show up. So I wasn't looking for AGT, but I had put myself in a headspace where I was like, this year, instead of overthinking every opportunity that comes my way, I'm going to just start saying yes to everything, because we don't really know the outcome of anything. And so trying to weigh the pros and cons, no one knows what the future holds and how anything's going to turn out. So to spend energy debating how it might unfold is kind of futile. It's something I sort of came to at the end of last year. I read a book called The Surrender Experiment.
By Mickey Singer. Yeah, I know him personally.
Yeah, which was recommended by you and your brother.
Yeah, and it's Grant's mentor. It's amazing.
I asked this question. I think it's a really great question to ask strangers and people is if you could recommend one book, what's the one book that impacted you the most in, say, the last 3 to 5 years? And usually people have a pretty short list, and it saves you a lot of time. You can go straight to the book. And so I was at the biohacking event, and I asked multiple people what was the one book that really hit you the hardest. And like multiple people talked about a book by Michael Singer, different books, but
The Untethered Soul.
yeah, and I kept hearing the Untethered Soul and the Surrender Experiment, so then I looked them up, and the summary for the Surrender Experiment kind of spoke to me, so that's the one I got. And that book had so many amazing lessons. I encourage everyone, that now became my book that hit me the hardest last couple of years. But I decided after reading that at the end of last year that this year, 2020, that I would do what he did, which was anytime I was at a point in my life where I had a choice between what life was offering me and my ego, I would always choose what life was offering me. Because, I thought about my life and I looked back on the last 20 years. I have no regrets, but I can look at moments in time and opportunities I was given. I'd been asked to do AGT several times over the last 20 years, and I'd always said no, and always came up with a million reasons not to do it. And I look at other opportunities I've had in life, and that's a consistent thing of mine, was like I always overanalyzed things instead of like just taking what life was giving me. I had to come up with all the reasons to do it or to not do it. A lot of times it was to not do it. And so this year I decided that I would say yes to every opportunity that life presented without question. And I had been doing that up until now. And then about 2 weeks ago, someone from AGT emailed me. I wasn't looking for this. I didn't apply to the show this year. And they said, hey, would you want to audition for AGT over Zoom? I said, okay. I didn't ask questions. The old me would have been like, well, maybe, can you tell me more? Can we hop on a phone call and you tell me how this is going to go? Why is it on Zoom? Is it going to be on TV? Like this is for sure how I would approach this 6 months ago. But instead I was like, okay, yeah, I didn't need to know anything else. So sure, let's do it. And I had been living this way up until now this year. And it's crazy, all of the opportunities that have come my way that I've said yes to, and then all the things that have come out of those things and the different connections. And it's insane. Like life is offering me everything I need. And sure, it is a product of hard work and what I've done. And I built my brand online and my audience, and all those things are important too. But at the same time, if all that efforting results in opportunities coming your way and you overanalyze them or you say no, then you're missing out. And so instead of efforting, I decided this year I would surrender to the opportunities life presented. AGT came calling. I said yes. I did an audition over Zoom, which was wild.
With who? Tell the viewers who you were.
Yeah, so it was, the typical, when you watch AGT, the first week is
America's
the audition.
Got Talent. If you don't know,
yeah, America's Got Talent. People walk on stage, and the celebrity judges are there in the audience, and they perform, and the judges say, we like you or we don't like you. You're going to move on in the competition or not. Well, what happened was they were filming the auditions, because those are pre-taped, because obviously there's thousands of people that want to audition. Some have talent, some don't. Some are the right fit for the show, some aren't. So they can't just play that live. So that's recorded. And those auditions become the TV show. Well, they didn't get to finish filming the auditions because of coronavirus. I believe they even filmed some later rounds with no audience. So it was just like the judges. And then even that became too risky to perform in the theater. And so they went fully to Zoom. And they still needed some acts. And so I got a call. I popped into, after obviously tons of meetings and conversations and applications, and they made sure I wasn't a serial killer. And then ultimately I got an appointment to do a Zoom audition with Simon Cowell and Heidi Klum and Sofia Vergara and Howie Mandel and Terry Crews. And it was surreal. Yeah. It was surreal. We've all done a Zoom meeting. You stare at the white screen, the waiting room.
Yeah.
So the moderator lets you in. So I'm staring at this screen for, it felt like 2 hours. It might've been a half hour. I don't know. And finally they let me in. There's no warning, okay, hey,
you're on.
Yeah, no, it's just you're just in the room all of a sudden, and there's Simon Cowell and Heidi, and you're on. It's just like walking out on stage. So it's very surreal, and you can watch the audition. It's already been posted to their YouTube channel, which is kind of cool. All the online auditions, the best of those ended up on their YouTube. The show airs on May 25th, so it's coming Tuesday. So in a way, it's kind of cool because my audition's already out there before the TV show has aired. And it went really well. It was amazing. They were I couldn't believe how complimentary they were of my act. They loved it. Everything worked, which is always great.
Yeah, that's great.
Ultimately, I got 4 yeses, which is sort of like a prerequisite to move on to the next round.
It's amazing.
It doesn't mean I'm moving on. It just is like, you must get 4 yeses to move on. And then the next round is the judge cuts. So that's where the judges decide, who goes on. And so I got my fingers crossed. Nothing's set in stone yet. I'm waiting for a phone call. We'll see. But even if they don't, it's already been such an incredible opportunity. I got to perform for Simon Cowell and the gang over Zoom. And I have that footage for the rest of my life. I have that experience. Forget the footage. I had that incredible experience. Yeah. And I'll have that memory for the rest of my life. And all because I didn't overanalyze it and say, well, wow, what if I don't get on the show? And what can I do on Zoom? And I just said, let's do it. And and even if it didn't air on their YouTube, I still had this incredible experience. So, keep your fingers crossed. Go watch the video on AGT's YouTube. Leave a comment or a like to let them know you like the act. And maybe, I don't know if that helps, but it could help.
Hey, I like the comment. It was awesome. It was awesome to watch you do that, man. And I have all the confidence in the world in you. And what I want to do now is allow you to unleash your power and gifts for the happy hustlers out there, because I know you have something for us.
Well, it's kind of a challenge. It's a bit of like, you're kind of putting me in a weird spot, because I talked about how I needed to be in the same room as people to do this. But if you're up for it, we could try sort of a little experiment.
Let's do it. Let's see if it works out.
Do you watch a lot of like movies and TV? I've been consuming so much content.
Movies. I like a good movie.
I've been consuming like an insane amount of Netflix, unabashedly. I don't apologize for it. I love consuming entertainment. As an artist, it inspires me. But certainly during quarantine, I've been watching more than normal. But you're a movie guy, a TV guy. Do you watch more TV shows or movies?
Movies.
Probably movies? Okay. Yeah. So what I want you to do is I want you to think of a random movie. Don't say anything out loud, okay? And to be fair, for everybody watching, I didn't tell you ahead of time what to think of or what to say. You're not playing along. This is your own choice, yes?
No,
this is your own choice?
Yeah, this is my 100% my own choice.
Okay, cool. So I want you to like imagine a scene. You have a movie in mind already, yes?
Yeah, I got a movie.
Okay, I want you to imagine a scene from this movie or like prominent character, actor.
Okay. Do I shut my eyes or keep them open?
You can look at me.
Okay.
You kind of like went into this headspace where it was like you kind of relate to the character, which to me, you said, what was it, Zor? Is that your?
I knew that was going to come back up.
It's probably like it kind of matches that sort of Carrie Jack warrior mentality. I think I have an idea.
Yeah, you probably.
I'm going to write something down. I'm going to write something down here.
If you get this, man, this is.
To be fair, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of movies you could have thought of. Yes.
Oh, for sure.
For the first time, what's the movie that you thought of?
Braveheart. Oh shit, man! He did it to me. Oh man. All right, that's impressive. Bravo, sir. Guys, for those of you who can't see, he's holding up a card that he wrote Braveheart on. It says clearly written Braveheart, and that was 100% the movie that I was thinking of. William Wallace, Mel Gibson crushed that role. Great movie. Very impressive, Max.
Yeah.
Wow. So where can people go who maybe aren't following you? Where could they go to find out more about you, maybe even book you for your next?
Sure. So my name on all social media is It's Max Major, ITS, It's Max Major. You can find me super active on Instagram and TikTok. I love TikTok. For the happy hustlers, opportunity of a lifetime on social media right now. It is not a platform for teenagers and children anymore. Like everything else evolves. TikTok is the greatest opportunity of the last 5 years for social media. So one last happy hustle tip. But yeah, I'm super active. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, some more long form content. maxmajor.net if you want to reach out, talk to me. But I typically answer all my DMs and comments. So slide into the DMs. Say what's up to you.
Slide in them DMs, y'all. All right, Max. I want to ask you the rapid fire round, and then we'll say goodbye. Is that cool? This is where I just ask questions, and you answer honestly first thing that comes to mind.
I'm ready.
All right. I want to know favorite movie. Go.
Silence of the Lambs.
Favorite food.
Sushi.
Favorite book.
Surrender Experiment.
Ooh, what's your spirit animal?
My dog Bruce.
Oh, cool.
He wakes up every day. Every day is a new day. Like I wish I could be more like him.
He's cool. I love your dog. I see him a lot.
That make him so happy. Dogs are the greatest teachers ever.
They really are. Best
Yeah.
business advice.
Best business advice. Try to learn as much as possible about as many topics as possible, because one, I think it really helps to have general knowledge about not just your craft, but business and things like this. So if you're an artist or a craftsman of any sort, learn about business. If you're a business person by nature, if that's your wiring, learn a hobby, learn an artistic expression. And so basically, whatever side of the coin you're on, learn the opposite side of it, and it'll really take you far. If you're someone who's really analytical and sort of business-driven entrepreneur, find a way to express your creativity. Dabble in things like painting, drawing, even if you think you're no good at them, because you'll learn so much about yourself, and it's really important to learn to express yourself. And likewise, if you're an artist, learn about business, because it's not enough to be good at your craft. You have to be able to learn how to sell it, market it, run a business. So that's my advice.
Sure. Great advice. One superpower, what would it be?
Boy.
I mean, you kind of already have superpowers, so.
Yeah, one more superpower. I don't know. Invisibility is probably the one I
That's
default
pretty cool.
to. Yeah, it's pretty cool, because then I could be like a more well-rounded magician. I could disappear.
Yes, very true.
Yeah.
One word you wish to be synonymous with your name for the rest of your life.
Entertainer.
Cool. 3 things you're most grateful for.
My dog, my girlfriend, and this time together right now.
Love it, brother. Thank you so much for sharing your love and light with the happy hustlers out there. Continue to spread your wings and fly, my brother. I will always be, a huge fan, and am here to support you any way I can. Last question before we say goodbye. What does happy hustling mean to you?
It means doing what you love, loving what you do. Yeah, because like grinding and efforting can only get you so far. So if you're not happy while you're doing it, then it's time to change course.
Preach it, brother. Thank you so much again, man. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for watching.
See ya.